Lady Gaga is an Academy Award, Golden Globe, and Grammy winner, singer, songwriter, and actress. Lang Lang is one of the most accomplished classical musicians of our time. What do they have in common? Both of them, as well as thousands other artists, choose to perform only on Steinway pianos. Why is that? This is a picture of Steinway Concert Grand Model D, arguably the world's most famous piano. It's the biggest of the piano range, and it's so powerful, its sound can reach every nook and cranny of a massive concert hall 7 times as big as this Barbican cinema, and with no mics required. Steinway doesn't only make grand pianos, though. They also make upright pianos, like this, known as the Model K. Steinway introduced this model 120 years ago, in 1903. They then stopped the production in 1939 because of the Great Depression in the US and the World War II in Europe. They then continued the production in 1982. When Steinway decided to revive the Model K after such a long break, the knowledge of how to make the Model K had been lost. Most of the workers died in the war, or they found other jobs when piano business couldn't pay for their living. So how did Steinway overcome this hurdle and resume the production of the Model K? Well, they have this staff engineer called John Bogios, and yes, piano engineering has a role that called staff engineer. It's not only for software. And John Bogios working at their New York factory. And he happened to have a Model K piano at home. So he brought his piano to the factory, meticulously took it apart, and painstakingly created drawings from each part. There are more than 12,000 parts in a Steinway piano, so it was no easy task. In software engineering, it's like trying to decipher the architecture of a legacy software system by reading through 12,000 lines of code. But Bogios didn't just stop there. He also noticed some questionable parts in his piano that didn't seem right. For example, he focused on the soundboard, which is a crucial part in pianos. It can be considered the piano's diaphragm, amplifying the sound it makes when it's played. When examining the soundboard details, Bogios realized that his Model K has an even thickness throughout. Well, that was a problem, because he knew from experience that it would make the soundboard too rigid, causing it to vibrate sectionally rather than as a whole, dampening the sound amplification power. So he carefully inspected his piano, drilled holes in it, searched for the variation of the soundboard thickness. He even went through the records from the Hamburg factory in Germany, and he still couldn't find the necessary information. Determined, he sought help from a former manager who had left the company by then. The former manager happened to log their knowledge in a personal book. And the former manager pointed pictures to Bogios, showing the soundboard measurement with a proper thickness distribution, thicker middle in the section, and thinner sections at the edges. Thicker section in the middle and thinner section at the edges. When Bogios returned to his piano, he finally found what he was looking for: the gradual tapering of the soundboard from the thick middle to the thinner edges. It was there all along, waiting to be uncovered. Imagine you are like Bogios' manager. You've got a lot of experience with valuable knowledge. You may have a mental model that can be visualized as a detective board with pieces of lessons from your past failures and successes, and a string that links all of the information together to create a coherent wisdom. That's how valuable you are. People reach out to you to seek your wisdom. But if you find yourself have to be in the room for every decision, instead of speeding up your organization, you may be slowing them down instead, because they can't manage without you. Let's flip the situation. What if you don't have to be in all the rooms or all the Slack channels or wherever decisions are made in your organizations? But people can still benefit from your lessons learned. Just like in piano engineering, software engineering lessons may manifest in various places. They may reside in the code, automated tests, technical design documentation, project updates, PR discussions, and so on and so forth. But not all of the lessons learned are accessible or searchable. If the lessons are in private email threads, then they're not very accessible by other people. If they are in recorded meetings, then they are not very searchable. Don't hide your detective board. Open it up for other people to come and see and borrow some pieces from it. Make sure your lessons learned are accessible and searchable. We have talked about various places where we can store our lessons learned, as well as where we shouldn't store them. They may come in different shapes and flavors, but I will call them all lessons learned logs. But automated tests look very different from project retros, which looks very different from pull request discussions, right? Well, I would still consider them all lessons learned log, as long as they have 3 important parts. Let's have an example. If you find a project retro doc that says, from July 2023, which is next month, we'll change our batch jobs to run twice a day. All right, but why? Why change the batch schedule? Something's missing here. All lessons learned must state the fact. This usually includes a description, and it can also include numbers, diagrams, and other details that can help anyone reading the log to understand the background behind the lesson. Without them, the readers will lose the why behind any recommendations or proposal that will come later on. Okay, another example. If you find a project update that says, based on our exploration on the current state of mobile development, we propose to serve HTML payload from the server. But what does it mean by the current state? When exactly is current? The state of mobile dev is very different this year compared to 5 years ago, compared to 10 years ago. It's missing the time. Without it, the readers will lose context on what else was happening when a lesson was learned. Another example, when you read a post-mortem report that says, in mid-April, 90% of our users experienced degraded performance for 30 minutes. It was caused by a bug that tried to read a 10 years' worth of cached data and stalled the system in the process. Okay, so what? What should we do next? Especially if we're not close enough to the system to know what could have been done instead. It's missing the conclusion, which can contain recommendations or proposals. Without this part, the writers may risk losing the reflection part and therefore not learning the lesson. Also, without this part, the readers will not be sure of what the lesson actually is and what the next steps are. Well, yes, the readers can create their own conclusions, but it's still essential for the writers to analyze the failure or successes and come up with idea in the first place, because they have the most context when the log was written. This is the most important part of the lessons learned logs. So please, please, please include the conclusion in your lessons learned logs. There are 2 sides of lessons learned, the search side and the write side. Any of them or both of them can be the dark side of lessons learned. If you don't make sure that our lessons are accessible and searchable, and it contains the key information. When you're back at work, I want you to sit down and try this out and see what happens. Book a time in your calendar, recurring every week. You can have it as part of the weekly reflections that Blanca said earlier in her talk. And then spend a few minutes to first search for your previous lesson. But don't go straight to the report URL or open that pull request by its number. No, that's cheating. Search by keywords and make sure that they can be found and accessed. Then second, ask yourself, what did I learn this week? And make sure it's logged with all the three key parts: the fact, the time, and the conclusion. I hope this tool can help dealing with the dark side of your lessons learned. My name is Dianing, and I thank you for your time.